Welcome.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Global Alzheimer's Disease Conference 2024. It's such an honor to have each and every one of you here today. Thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you to our sponsors. And again, thank you all for joining us today. At this time, I welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Choi Hall. He's an author, international speaker, and talent retention expert. Welcome, Dr. Choi Hall.
Thank you, Gigi. Before we begin, I think people should know a little bit about you. So you are an award-winning author, motivational keynote speaker, CEO, and founder of Life Service Center of America. You're a first-generation Haitian American and the host of the award-winning Walk With Me podcast.
Thank you, Dr. Choi, for such a warm welcome.
You're welcome. You know, this topic isn't an easy topic. It is difficult in many ways. We have dealt with our loved ones. We have seen things happen that we wish we had never seen or experienced. The message for you tonight for me, is about the white rose. It's a message of hope for caregivers. I think it'd be helpful if we just were able to ground ourselves with a few facts about the Alzheimer's situation, the disease, and what we actually have to deal with. So I thought this was interesting. So just take a second and guess, how many seconds do you think elapse? Yes, 3 seconds elapse. Someone in the world develops dementia. 55 million individuals are affected worldwide. It doubles every 20 years. We know that in America, there are 7 million Americans who are now impacted by dementia. That number has gone up by 2 million since 2020. The percentage of people who have dementia who live in low and middle income countries around the world is 60%. And it is expected to be at 71% by 2050. 1 in 3 Americans die with dementia. Some of us on this call are suffering with that same situation. We have lost loved ones, or we are currently dealing with loved ones. Those of you who are listening are in the same vein. So I want you to meet my mom, AKA Fanny. My mom was a wonderful woman. She taught me a lot about leadership. So I'll tell you a little bit about my story. When I was 12 years old, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. We lived in a small rural town in West Virginia. It was poor economic conditions, limited education, and we had really no large employers or medical facilities within 45 minutes of where we lived. It was very hard for us. And 50 some years ago, when a person was diagnosed with cancer, the idea was that we thought she would die. But mom had a little different idea in mind. And so she had made a commitment and she said, you know, I was planning to live before I heard this information. So I am going to continue to live until the good Lord takes me. So with that being said, we had a pretty horrific summer of taking care of mom after she had her surgery, but mom survived that awful summer. Some things that mom taught me during that time. She said that my character would always be defined by the choices I made, not the circumstances I'd find myself in. She said that we were poor by circumstance, not by choice. She had cancer by circumstance, not by choice. There were so many life lessons I learned by her bedside that summer that have truly impacted my leadership and also made a huge difference for how I think about Alzheimer's and how I was able to deal with that. So 43 years go by and mom is diagnosed with Alzheimer's. It's pretty sad for us. Weren't really sure how we would deal with it. but we knew some things. We knew the most important thing we had to do was to take care of her. And so every decision that we made regarding this disease was always about the benefit of mom. How would we treat the disease? How would we help her through that process? You know, it's one of the saddest parts about Alzheimer's, as far as the disease is concerned, is there's no cure today for it. There's medication that can help mitigate some of the symptoms, but there is no cure today. And so if you participate in Alzheimer's events, you'll notice that there are flowers that are presented during those events, whether it's a walk or a rally, but there's only one color of flower that's not distributed, and that flour that's not distributed is white. So that's how it kind of blended into to my message this evening when I chose the white rose. Rose was my mom's middle name, and she really loved that flower as well. And since it was white, I thought, it's really appropriate to talk about the white rose then for tonight and the hope that we can have for caregivers. So although these statistics are so gut-wrenching, I mean, 7 million Americans dealing with it, 60% of people with dementia live in low and middle income countries. And not only are they living in these low and middle income countries, but we have in the United States, we have a number of individuals who are dealing with Alzheimer's who live in those particular ways. The one thing that we always did in our care for mom was making sure that she felt really good about her surroundings. So I'm going to share with you a few things that impacted her based on choices that we made. And I'm not suggesting that from a medical community, those would be the choices that would be done medically. I'm going to leave that up to others who have the expertise in that. But I know this worked for us, and that was to stabilize her environment, to not create too much sensory overload for mom. There were times when we would go out to dinner thinking that, yeah, take her out into the public. Let's have her go out and let her be a part of the world. But what happened is mom retreated to a very dark place during that time. She retreated to a place where she was confused. She didn't know what was happening. Oftentimes, she couldn't even remember what utensil to use to actually eat. That's how this disease impacts people. So we had to have a conversation with my dad, and I explained to him, I said, Dad, we'll still take you out to dinner, but we won't be taking mom. We're going to make sure that somebody comes and watches mom and takes care of her. We'll treat her to a special dinner at the house where we can really make sure that the senses that she's experiencing are not too overwhelming for her. So we did that. Part of the opportunity I had in helping my parents is during the last 5 years of their life, they lived with us. So we created a little apartment area for them in the first level of our home. I'm from Charleston, South Carolina, so we don't have basements in Charleston. So the first level was her space. That was their space for their apartment. And then we lived on the floors above. Our son, who had custody of his two kids, lived with us at the time, and we actually had 4 generations living together for 5 years. So I have a little background when it comes to this, and that's why I felt it was helpful to share some of this information with you. Some of the other opportunities that we had was we didn't force mom to remember who we were. We didn't make it a big deal that she had to remember our names or recall certain facts and pieces of information. She didn't do it on purpose. It wasn't as though she was like trying to hurt us because she couldn't remember who we were. Now, my mom also had Parkinson's as well as the dementia. So for her, she was less mobile than most. But mom was like the sweetest little thing ever. She was like 98 pounds soaking wet. And when she had her dementia, she did not turn aggressive. She wasn't mean. And so we were blessed in that particular way that we were just dealing with her situation from probably a little more calm situation than what most people may deal with. So in that time of dealing with her, it was about making sure her comfort was paramount to everything that was happening. making sure that we did not force her to remember things that she did not feel like she needed to remember, to watch the sensory overload, to keep her on a routine. We found that it was extremely helpful when individuals are on a routine and that routine doesn't get broken. Early on with the disease, my brother, who lived in West Virginia, would come and visit. Well, in the very beginning stages, when he would come to visit, he would leave going like, "Mom's in great shape." And we were like, well, yeah, she was in great shape for you. She saved up for this. But after you're gone for the next 3 days, she was marshmallow. She was toast. She was just exhausted because she put so much energy into trying to put on a face. So these are some of the things that we must deal with when we're uh, focused in Alzheimer's. The other thing that's very important was making sure that we paid attention to the prescription medication that mom was taking. Prior to living with us, she was spending upwards of $700 a month on medication for that. What we learned, and my wife was just a wonderful caregiver, was able to go in and analyze the prescription medication and say, I think maybe we could do something a little different. And she worked with the doctors and she found out that sometimes some of the medication she was taking wasn't necessarily for the Alzheimer's, it was for something else. But we didn't have to worry about that something else because what we really need to focus on was the Alzheimer's. And we found that sometimes drugs were not necessarily acting for the very best. So it was really helpful to make sure that we had somebody who was responsible for that. There are a lot of expenses that are going to come up possibly in dealing with Alzheimer's. Not everyone is going to be fortunate enough to have a space where people can live with you and you as a family member can take care of them and maybe even have the opportunity to bring in some aides or individuals who can assist in that caregiving during the time. But I believe that it's important to make sure that all of the efforts and energies that we put into um, to the care for those individuals has to be focused on them. So I think that also leans back to something that I'll refer to as a transformational principle, is a transformational leadership principle, and it's about the focus is on others first before self. And as we are taking care of those loved ones, I think that's the message that we have to remember. I think that's a little bit of how we had to prepare our mindset for our family members to do that. It was important to have some visits, but we needed to make sure that we didn't overwhelm those visits. Try to keep that, as I said before, the schedule as neat and clean as we possibly could. I encourage you with this information. I thought I could give you a lot more statistics, but if the ones I quoted in the beginning weren't enough to grab your attention, then I didn't know what would. So I thought, well, let me just tell you a little bit about a story. Let me tell you a story about how that is. So there was one time when mom was with us, and so we were in the living room, and we were sitting down on the couch, and she looked over at me, and she would say, um, "How much longer do I have to be here?" Because you see, we had moved mom from her home. My mom was born and raised in the same house for 80 years before she came to live with us. And I had to think quickly as to what I would say. And I said to her, well, can you last through the weekend? And she said, yes, I can do that. And so instead of trying to convince her about these new living arrangements, I was able to deflect and answer the question in a way that she got some peace in knowing that there was an answer that she could then deal with at that time. Because very shortly afterwards, mom had completely forgotten that she'd even asked that question. Now, the thing about this disease that's so disheartening, not only for the individual who's affected by it, but also when we take a look at the individuals within our our family and what that impact is. And so my grandchildren did not have an opportunity to really know my mom in the way in which I did. Lots of life lessons that mom provided. She would say to me that she would say it's not the successes or failures that shape your life, but it's how you handle them. From there, I learned and I thought, all these lessons that were gone now because her memory was gone. And so I had an opportunity and I wrote a book and the book is called Fanny Rules, and it's a mother's leadership lessons that never grow old. And so in that book, I tell a little bit of some of the stories that I've mentioned to you just to provide some, background to it. But mom had these ideas about the way you treat people. And she really felt that it didn't matter whether you were the janitor or whether you were the admin or whether you were the CEO of a company, that you treated everyone the same way. As a matter of fact, she had a funny little saying about it. She says, you treat people right because we all put our pants on the same way, one leg at a time. And it was just that really good grounded information. And I felt, wow, what a waste that all this was gone. So I wrote the book. It ended up being a bestseller. It was number one in business and professional humor. Um, but I don't say that to you because that's an accolade for me. I say that because I believe that that story resonated with people. I believe that others need to tell their story, and sometimes they can't always do it. And the good news and why I don't mind talking about that book is because the proceeds of that book benefit the Alzheimer's Association. We have raised over $25,000 for Alzheimer's awareness and research through that particular book. Now, if some of you want to buy it, that's okay, you can do it, but I didn't come on to sell the book. I came on to tell you the story about my mom and the impact Alzheimer's had with us. But the book is such an important part of it because there are 31 teachable moments wrapped around 9 rules that mom taught me. And so I thought that I would do something a little different for you today, especially since we are in a Zoom environment. It wouldn't maybe necessarily work the same way if we were standing in front of a group of people in a room. I would have to certainly be a little more polished, maybe in the way I did some of that beginning presentation. But I want to read a section to you from the book, and it's called The White Rose, appropriately, Who Are You? And this is a love letter to caregivers. Dearest caregiver, as caregivers for a loved one with dementia, there is no joy in being asked those 3 dreadful words: who are you? You just feel like your total insides have been ripped out and laid upon the ground, exposed for the world to see. Vulnerable, naked, uncomfortable. To make matters worse, you come to the realization that the words were spoken by a person you've known maybe all of your life. Someone who has loved you, shared a good time, laughed at you, very deservingly, possibly, and then so darn ugly of you. It makes you shudder to think you could ever be beautiful again. After collecting your thoughts, you realize those words weren't said to hurt you. Your loved one was said them from an honest place, yet a place filled with terror and fear of not knowing. Something deep down inside tells your loved one that they should know who you are, but it isn't coming to the surface. You will not know for sure, but you can only imagine. It must be like having the answer to a question on the tip of your tongue, and yet you can't get it out. It's like being in class. The teacher asks a question. It's right there. You've studied this to nauseam. You know this information, and you cannot for the life of you speak it. It's right there. You just need to say it, but you can't. The words don't come no matter how much you wish they would. My wife, Vicky, and I have had those moments of knowing something and not finding the words to express what we were feeling or thinking. It was scary for us when it happened. We think, what in the world is wrong with us? Why are our brains not working today? Confused, defeated, exhausted. So if for one moment you can get a grasp of what that feels like to know the answer, to see it right before one's very eyes, and yet their brains hide it from them, I think that is far worse than not knowing. Our eyes started to swell when we thought about it. The breathing became accelerated, and our palms were sweating. It broke us, utterly broke us. During one of the times that mom lived with us, each evening, I would visit her in Dad's apartment that we'd set up in the lower level of our home. When she was lucid, she would smile and give me a nod when I entered the room, sort of like a debutante would do if one of her young men came calling. Those were the times when I thought maybe she was getting better. After making small talk, I would sit down beside her, trying to look into her eyes for some reassurance, for love, for recognition. Mom no longer looked at me the same as when I first arrived. Something was different. In an instant, Mom's eyes would go dark, distant, hollow. She would so lovingly pick up my hand and look into my eyes with an expression that I can only explain now as a look of doubt and uncertainty. My dearest Fanny would ask, "Who are you?" I would collect my thoughts. I'd look up and smile. I'd move in a little closer and whisper, and I'd say, "I'm that good-looking man that lives upstairs." Fanny would give me that subtle laugh with a somewhat shy downward turn of her head as if she were playing the role of a perfect Southern ingenue at a cotillion. Then looking up at me, Mom would utter with perfect confidence, "I thought you looked familiar." One day, we will have our white flower, our victory, the first Alzheimer's survivor. So until then, my friends and faithful caregivers, let us march forward into the fields. We must stay vigilant to the end. Plant the seeds, spread the word, grow white flowers. Know that we are the caregivers who spread the hope a cure will be discovered. One day we will rejoice as those loved ones who once were lost to us will now be found. The hope that we have breaks the cycle of helplessness that we feel sometimes trapped by this disease. So if we can remember that, if we can remember that our hope can sometimes be enough, we may think that we have to do a lot of big magnanimous things, that we have to go out and we have to try to solve the problem, but sometimes giving hope to others around us. But I encourage you, be involved, learn, put your efforts and energies into finding those white flowers, because we need that for all those individuals who have been stricken by this horrible disease.
Thank you, Dr. Choi Hall. Very powerful. Now, our next speaker is Dr. Tanya Gold. She's a MD, family holistic medicine, inspirational speaker, author, and she teaches yoga and laughter yoga. Welcome, Dr. Tanya Gold. Oh, you're muted.
Ask that question. Can you all hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Gigi, for having me. And thank you, Choi, for that amazing talk and that introduction of Gigi. She's amazing light in this world. So thank you for putting on this amazing conference. And this, I feel honored to be here. So as a board certified family medicine physician, holistic medical doctor, I do see patients in my clinic with Alzheimer's, but I am going to share a personal story because this disease is near and dear to my heart. For me, my grandmother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and I recall when she was 50 years old, which is, I'm actually older than that now, she told me she was old. Now, when to my ears, being 8 years old, I actually thought she was old because, you know, an 8-year-old hearing a 50-year-old say she's old, it's like, okay. So for me, I didn't understand the stuff that was happening. So she said she was old, and then she stopped doing the things that kept her young. She was part of the Jewish Community Center, stopped going there. Again, I don't know if it was the brain function starting where it was deteriorating that kept her from going, or if she heard some comments at the gym like, oh, why are you here? Again, that wasn't mentioned. But then she stopped watching her soap operas. She stopped reading. She stopped playing games like card games, stopped hanging out with her friends, and just basically became more isolated. And as a kid, I just remember her repeating herself over and over to the point we were like, Grandma, you said that already. You said that already. Again, we were so young, we didn't really know what was going on. My aunt was her caretaker. My grandfather had long passed of a heart attack, and she was, you know, my aunt was so young, and at the time herself, she was trying to find a fella and move out, but because of my grandma's condition, she felt like she was stuck. So she's about almost 40, my aunt was. Anyway, long story short, she put my grandmother in a nursing home because it became too difficult to take care of her because she also had to work. And when she would go to work, she found my grandmother sometimes just left the apartment, and it wasn't a great neighborhood. And we just were concerned for her safety. So I remember visiting my grandmother and all the residents said, "Oh my God, I didn't know your grandmother knew all these languages." And literally my grandmother would go to every single person from all different backgrounds and just smile. She was like the most beautiful blessing in the world. And everybody was just like, "Oh, your grandma." And she would just listen to everybody. I don't know if she was understanding, but she would just listen. Songs resonated with her. And that's one thing we do know with Alzheimer's, especially if you have parents, family members, or friends that are dealing with people with Alzheimer's. Music is a great way to connect with them. It's the last part to go. So if you know music from their time period, it's actually a wonderful way to play that music for them. One of my patients did that with her mom, and she said her mom turned nice. She used to be very grumpy and upset because she was seeing the changes that were happening and was not liking it. But with the music, she started dancing and singing, and she actually started getting up more, and her blood pressure started dropping. So they were taking her off her blood pressure medicines, which I thought was really cool. But I just tell you that because sometimes we always think, all right, if you have Alzheimer's, that's it, it's over. But you can start to slow down the process. Supplements can help. One of the big supplements I recommend for a patient I'm seeing now, and her mini mental status exam literally went in half the score number. So she improved her memory, is Brain Vital. And again, I don't get any credit or money from these companies. I just found benefit. One is Designs for Health, which is a reputable company. So whenever you get supplements, just make sure the brand matters, high quality brands. So it's okay to see if they're pharmaceutically graded, or if they have USP, United States Pharmacy, or good manufacturing practices. You just don't want to get anything from any place, and make sure you try to limit the sugar content. If it has a lot of like gummies or processed sugar, it can be more inflammatory to the brain. The other one is another supplement that I found helpful for this patient in particular, I'll call her Marty, is fish oil. So I actually take it personally with my family history, and I'm also taking the Brain Vital. I was like, if I could reduce my risks, why not? And behaviors. So I'm going to ask everybody to unmute, and if you're able to put on your video, to just please stand up. So I'll just wait for that to happen. I don't know if Dr. Troy, if you're able to do that. If you can just unmute everyone. And if you're sitting down, I encourage you. I created something called the 20-second workout. Again, I'm not here to pitch anything to you, but what I'm trying to say is if we can move and get up, it actually increases blood flow to the brain. So it does reduce your risk for dementia. So if you can't adjust your camera so it can see your head, no worries. But if you're able to, just adjust it if you're standing up. If you can't stand, just please stretch or sit. If you're driving, of course, please don't stand. But let's just stretch for a moment. Reach, reach, reach. Don't forget the beautiful smile in those cheeks. Raise those corners of the mouth and take a nice deep breath. Inhale. And a nice ah.
Ah.
Yeah, let's just let it go. Deep breath in again. Inhale. And a nice ah. And just shake out the body. One of my big things that I love, and I don't know if you could see me right now, I'm just like bouncing. It's actually really good for low back pain. It's good for shoulder and neck strains. If you've been sitting a lot, bouncing is really good. And just kind of wiggle those wrists a little bit. Wriggle the waist and shoulders, the hips, but just little bouncing. And I know you can't see my feet, but I'm just lifting up the heels and just bouncing on my legs. So my knees are bent and just a little bounce in my hips, like I'm on a trampoline. So just doing this for 20 seconds every 20 minutes throughout the day that can include 10 minutes in a 10-hour day. So every hour you're getting at least a minute movement. But the nice part is as you sprinkle it in, these mini workouts have shown benefit for the brain function, reducing risk for Alzheimer's 25%, which for me, that's pretty significant. And then the other part is you're actually increasing blood flow and helping reduce angst in the body. So tension, if you're having a lot of repetitive use injuries from typing so much or using your mouse or your keyboard, this can start to release those shoulders. And then one of my exercises is eye exercises. So really simple right now. I just want you to kind of look away from your computer screen and just look in the distance. Pretend there's no walls if you're indoors. You take a nice deep breath, inhale, and then just gently look close, like something's right in front of you. Let's do that 2 more times. Look in the distance. Widen your vision. So bright eyes here, big smile. Look in the distance and then look nearby. Good. And I just want you to now just trace your name. So if you have a long name, you can just shorten it, but just trace your name at least 5 letters with your eyes only. So just moving your eyes, not your head. Trace your name. And these kind of exercises, I'm doing this with my hand, but pretend this was your eyes moving. You're strengthening the eye muscles, which can reduce eye strain. It also improves flexibility in the eye muscles and also the strength in the eye muscles. The reason this is also important and can help you with reading. I don't know if you've noticed as we tend to age, I noticed my sister, my family members are using readers. And I was like, God, and they're like, Tanya, how do you not have readers? I was like, my eye exercises. I'm like, did you not check my post? And so I was like, do your eye exercises 3 minutes a day, keeps the doctor away. But what it actually does is strengthens and can help the vision. So a lot of my patients who are doing this now, they're not needing stronger prescriptions, or they're actually reducing their eyewear, their eyeglass wear. So I just thought that was pretty cool. So again, remember, your body can heal. You're not a disease. And if you notice you have risk factors, family history of dementia or Alzheimer's, or you're noticing, sometimes is okay. If we forget things here and there, you go upstairs and you're like, I forgot why I'm up here. That's okay. But if you're forgetting where you live, you're forgetting your name, things are just, lots of things are happening. This is the time. Don't wait for that. It's the time to put in the good habits. So I just want to leave you with 3 things that you can start doing for you. And then one more thing about grandma. So the first thing is move. We know blood flow. There's tons of literature. I won't bore you with all the sites, but this is from the American Heart Association, the National Institute of Health, the Alzheimer's Foundation. All these recommend movement, sometime at least 10 minutes a day. So the best way to do it, you can sprinkle it in through your day. You can, of course, wake up in the morning. But if you sit all day for 8 hours, it's a lot of tension in the low back, a lot of tension in the neck and shoulders. What that shows is if you sit for 8 hours, even if you exercise, it doesn't offset the your lifestyle. So that sitting is like the new smoking. They actually say it can shave 5 years off your life. So as much as you can, try to move throughout your day. So don't sit for more than an hour at a time. Get up at least a minute or so. The best rule of thumb is 20-20. Every 20 minutes, get up for 20 seconds. Again, not a big thing. Every 20 minutes, get up for 20 seconds. Do something. Shake, shake, shake. Move your eyes, shake your wrist, whatever your body's needing. Ask it. You might just need to get outside, whatever it is, but just make sure. Movement. The second part is learning something new. I know it's not rocket science, but how often do we do the same thing every single day? So just learning something. What I'm doing, my social media person's from Philippines. So I decided to send her messages in Filipino. It's called Filipino, the language. So I'm in the meantime listening to how the words sound. I'm learning Filipino. So, but whatever it's fun for you, make it fun. I also love Zumba, but learn something new. You can, again, make it active, music, whatever it is that's going to uplift you. And then the third part is the food, nutrition. So make sure you're hydrating. Get that water if you need those supplements to just add to it, but nutrition. And we know vitamins from our foods, berries, like blueberries, organic, any of the colors of the rainbow. Same with your vegetables, and just try to make them diverse. But nutrition is really key to longevity too. And we always think, are you what you eat? Yes. And I'm going to be a little blunt for a moment. I'm from New York, but shit in is, yeah. So if you crap, and it's okay to ask yourself, what am I feeding my brain? If it's yucky, now it doesn't mean never, but if most of the time it's yucky, that's not good. And it's okay to say the brain's not going to function well. And we see that over and over. Sugar is the main culprit. Gymna is a wonderful supplement that makes sugar taste bad, and you can change your taste buds. So if you really say, Dr. Gold, I hate, I think it's a cilantro. For some people, it tastes like soap duds, or I forget the name, but they literally, some people, vegetables taste nasty. You can actually sprinkle in some maple syrup or a little raw local honey. That's fine. So make the food taste good so you feel better. For my grandma, she always called me a Shana Madela. So I'm Jewish. She used to speak Yiddish with the family, not tell me what she was saying, because I never really learned all the words. But I want to say to all of you, Shana Madelas, beautiful people in this world, remember, you can improve, feel good, and there is hope. So with grandma, I still love her. She's still with me always. She completed her life a little ways back now, but her message of happiness and spreading cheer with everyone is something that I resonate with very, very near and dear to my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tanya Gold. And I'll pass over the mic to Dr. Choi Hall.
Oh, great. Thank you. So in this portion, so Gigi, let's just kind of examine a little bit about what do you think would be the best for us to do at this point?
Awesome. We can receive any questions if folks have any questions for Dr. Tanya Gold.
Yes.
Sure.
So let's see what we have. I'm checking the chat
Okay.
to see where we are. So Dr. Gold, I mean, thank you so much. What a great, I love those three things. And so I just want to, I know you reminded people at the very end, but I really think that it's really good that it's 20 seconds for 20 minutes. So it's really easy to remember, right? It's the 2020. So what do you think about our vision? Our vision is 2020. Look at you, girl, giving us an idea like that. I mean, how sweet could that possibly be, right? And I like the thing that you said, shake things out. I'm like old like grandma, so I don't know. Shaking, parts may fall off. So I'm not really 100% sure about that, but I'm gonna do my part of making sure I'm moving and doing that.
Yeah.
I like to do a little finger dancing every now and then because I think that's good, but it may not be enough movement. Learn something new. I think that's really awesome. Part of my messaging to people is you don't have to know everything. You just need to be teachable. So learn something new. I love that. And the nutrition. I'm not going to repeat your phrase from New York. I'm not from New York. I'm from South Carolina. So I would say whatever you eat, bless your heart, because that's what's going to come out.
That's exactly. I love that. You did the G-rated version. I'm going to
I
say
did
that
the G.
instead.
Yeah, Mama would be very proud of me for doing the G-rated version if she were still here.
She's
Did that
still
prompt any
watching.
questions? Let's look and see
Yeah.
from the chat.
Okay. I'm not seeing anything on my end.
Yeah,
Nope.
and if there's any personal, I mean, honestly, you can always chat. This is a touchy subject. So honestly, if anybody has, I'll tell you how to reach out to me. And you can always ask personal questions later or just go to my, it says Tanya Gold. It's at Dr. Tanya Gold, DR, and then my name. So I'm on all the social media, major social media channels, and you can just hashtag how how we know each other from this meeting. But it's honestly, things pop up. So if you also feel fine and you don't know what your labs are, you can actually do a gut test because we know the gut brain connection to see how your gut is actually doing. Because remember, you can feel fine and not be fine. That's why people, God forbid, are having heart attacks before they are in the hospital because they felt fine the day before. So just make sure you do your due diligence for yourself to make sure your risks are low. And then also we can always improve. There's no endpoint to how healthy you can be and how happy you can be as well.
That's great. Dr. Gold, please go ahead and put your contact information in the chat so people can just collect it from there.
Sure.
All right, Gigi, it's back to you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Dr. Choi. Now, our next speaker is Brett Fisher, and he is a real estate broker. Welcome, Brett.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much, EG. I really appreciate this opportunity. I am not a scientist. I've never written a book. I'm not as good looking as many of the people on this platform, but I am very passionate about Alzheimer's. Just to give you a little bit of background about myself, I've been doing real estate here in New York City for about 14 years. And my mom, she is a psychotherapist studying the field of gerontology. So her day-to-day, she works with a lot of the elderly. She's been involved with a lot of different programs like Hugs to Health and Special Olympics, and really has been involved from the Alzheimer's point of view with a lot of her clients. The reason why I got so involved with it is, in addition to that, my three of my four grandparents unfortunately passed away due to complications of Alzheimer's, and it really has affected me a lot. And I started a charity called the All Pie Alzheimer's Challenge, where basically you just get pied in the face and donate money for Alzheimer's research. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about animals and the importance that they have with Alzheimer's, because, we think about how can we learn more about this terrible disease. And, certain studies, they can't be done on humans because a lot of the issues we find out after they pass away and they study the brain. So I wanted to discuss 4 different animals that have had a big impact, and that's mice, zebrafish, fruit flies, and worms. Now, I'm sure many of you are familiar with how mice and rats have had an impact, but I want to discuss a little bit more into detail because mice play a very critical role in Alzheimer's research, primarily because their psychological and genetic characteristics closely resemble those of humans, believe it or not. And the similarity makes them invaluable models for studying the complex mechanisms of Alzheimer's disease and for evaluating potential therapeutic interventions. So, in regards to the genetic similarity and the manipulation, mice share, as I discussed, many genetic similarities with humans. And because of that, it allows different researchers to manipulate their genomes in a way that actually mimics human diseases. For Alzheimer's research, transgenic mice are engineered to carry human genes that are known to contribute to the development of Alzheimer's, such as mutations in the amyloid precursor protein and also PSEN1 and PSEN2. These genetically modified mice have developed many of the pathological features of Alzheimer's disease, including amyloid beta plaques and neurofibrillary tangles composed of tau protein, which are actually the hallmark signs of the disease in humans. So the ability to induce Alzheimer's-like symptoms, which we could not really do in humans outside of people that already have it, but we can do this in mice, and it allows researchers to observe the progression of the disease in real time and under controlled laboratory conditions. This is extremely crucial for understanding how Alzheimer's evolves around or from mild cognitive impairments to severe neurodegenerative stages. Some of these mice models have been very instrumental in studying the sequential development of amyloid and tau pathologies and their impact on brain function, particularly in learning and memory tasks. These studies have been really pivotal in identifying critical windows for therapeutic intervention that might be more effective at slowing or reversing disease progression. And we've been studying this for several decades, and every time there seems to be a breakthrough, there's something that holds the studies back and saying, okay, what else can we do so we can learn more about the disease? But perhaps the most significant contribution of the mouse models is their role in preclinical testing of new treatments. Because these models display many key features of Alzheimer's, they are ideal for testing the efficacy and safety of potential drugs before they are considered for human trials, because we can't simply give some of these tests on humans because it could be dangerous or it could have side effects that we aren't really aware of. For instance, many of the current clinical trials for Alzheimer's drugs, especially those targeting amyloid beta and tau proteins, were first validated in mouse models. So mice have been used to test a variety of treatment strategies, including immunotherapy, small molecule inhibitors, and lifestyle interventions such as diet and exercise, because we've seen over the years that both have a huge impact on who is more likely to develop Alzheimer's and different symptoms with dementia. But beyond drug testing, mouse models are essential for basic research into the molecular and cellular mechanisms underlying Alzheimer's. They help scientists explore how genetic and environmental factors contribute to the disease and examine the role of inflammation, certain types of stress, and neuronal loss. Insights gained from these studies are fundamental in framing our overall understanding of Alzheimer's and in guiding the development of comprehensive treatment approaches. So I could talk about mice and the impacts they've had for quite some time. So I want to focus on the other 3 animals as well. So regarding zebrafish in Alzheimer's research, they're increasingly used due to their physiological and genetic similarity to humans as well. But these small fish are particularly useful because their embryos are transparent, which allows scientists to observe changes in brain structure and function in real time. Zebrafish can be genetically engineered to produce proteins related to Alzheimer's, such as amyloid beta, which forms plaques in the human brain. One of the strengths of using zebrafish in Alzheimer's research is their rapid life cycle, which allows for quick genetic studies and drug testing. For instance, researchers have used zebrafish to screen thousands of compounds to identify those that can reduce amyloid beta aggression or aggregation in the brain. Such studies are invaluable because they can rapidly pinpoint potential therapeutic compounds that might take years to identify in specific models. Additionally, zebrafish models have helped clarify the role of amyloid beta in Alzheimer's development. By observing how modified proteins affect zebrafish, researchers have gained insights into the early stages of Alzheimer's, which is crucial for developing preventative treatments. The ease of genetic manipulation and the visual accessibility of zebrafish neurons make them a really powerful tool for understanding complex diseases like Alzheimer's. Moving on to fruit flies, there's another important model, like I said, talking about four, and it provides unique advantages due to their short lifespan as well, but also their genetic simplicity. Researchers they use fruit flies to study the genetic and molecular pathways involved in Alzheimer's disease, once again, particularly focusing on the tau protein, which can form different tangles in the brains of Alzheimer's patients. Studies in fruit flies have shown that certain genes and proteins can influence tau pathology. For example, modifying specific genes in fruit flies has been shown to either increase or decrease tau aggregation in their brains. And the reason why this research is critical is because it helps identify potential genetic targets for drug development aimed at down tau pathology in Alzheimer's patients. Additionally, fruit flies have been used to test various chemical compounds, which could potentially reduce tau toxicity. These experiments are quicker and less expensive than similar tests in certain models, allowing researchers to explore a wider range of potential treatments. But a bigger thing is that their ability to rapidly reproduce enable scientists to study the effects of genetic changes across multiple generations, providing insights into how genetic factors might influence the likelihood of developing Alzheimer's. This can help identify individuals at higher risk and potentially guide personalized treatment strategies in the future. And the last I'm going to focus on are worms. The nematode worm is a valuable model for Alzheimer's research, particularly for studying the toxic effects of, once again, the amyloid beta protein. These worms can be genetically engineered to produce human amyloid beta, allowing researchers to study its impact on cellular health and lifespan. Different worms' simplicity and transparency makes it easy to observe how amyloid beta aggregates and damages cells, providing insights into the mechanisms of the neurodegeneration in Alzheimer's. Using these types of worms has led to the discovery of various cellular pathways that are impacted by amyloid beta toxicity. For example, studies have shown that enhancing certain stress response pathways in these worms can reduce the harmful effects of amyloid beta, suggesting that potential therapeutic targets for Alzheimer's. These findings highlight the importance of cellular defenses in combating neurodegenerative diseases and offer hope for developing treatments that could enhance these natural protective mechanisms in humans. And additionally, once again, we're seeing a recurring theme with the short lifespan. Because of their specific lifespan, these worms allow for rapid high throughout testing of potential drug compounds. This capability is crucial for quickly determining which compounds are most effective at reducing amyloid beta toxicity and could potentially be developed into drugs for treating Alzheimer's. So I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to me discussing these different animals. I know some of these are very complex, and I'm learning something new every single day. I'm reading different articles, speaking to different scientists, and reading books. And Dr. Troy Hall's book, I'm excited to pick up myself to hear about his stories and his family and his mom. And I think the best way to really grow and understand more about Alzheimer's is to put yourself in a situation, immerse yourself, and there's so much to learn. I mean, people have spent billions of dollars in studying for decades and decades, and there's always something new that's coming out. So thank you so much for your time. I'll leave my information in the chat.
Thank you, Brett. I took notes here. Thank you so much. Very powerful.
So Brett, really easy to remember your name. That's my brother's middle name, so that's really great. So I wanted to ask you from the material that you provided, which was really, really exciting. I'm going to put up on the screen one thing that I thought was really interesting, and that was I did not know um, I did not know what a zebrafish was. And so here we go. So I thought everybody who can see this can see zebrafish, and that way, yeah, it kind of looks like a zebra, right? Fish looks like a zebra. That kind of made sense. I kind of could figure that out in my own head, but I thought, yeah, visually, it's always good visualization. So I've learned one new thing. So Dr. Gold, I've learned one thing new. In 20 minutes, I'll be shaking something. So I'll be doing that. But Brett, I want to come back to you and say, of the messages that you delivered, like when you talked about the mice, the zebrafish, the fruit fly, and the worms, what is something that would be the most helpful? If you could narrow it down to one thing that would help people listening to your message today, what should they do? What should they learn, or what should they think about?
I think, well, for me, I kind of look at it at a different perspective because people see rats and mice on the street. I mean, you're not going to see zebrafish that much, but people see fruit flies and you think of them as pests and killing them. My thought, and I'm very passionate about animals and studying different animal intelligence, not only specifically related to Alzheimer's, but in general and our interactions with them. Although I do eat meat, so I got to be transparent about that. But if there's just one thing, it's when you see a specific animal, every animal has a purpose in this world. And the diseases that mice and rats have carried, and yes, we can get sick from them. There's so much that each animal does for studies for humans. And I know that's not specifically with Alzheimer's, but they really play a critical role. And some of these animals that we think of as pests, like mice, they share a lot of genetic similarities with us as people, and we don't expect that. We think of primates and other animals that look like us or that we hear about, but some of these other animals, there's really a lot we can learn simply from studying for them. So I guess the one thing is just when you're looking at an animal, think about how they can impact you in a positive way and humans in general. I think that's the big takeaway because there's a lot of other things that can be a little bit confusing.
Brett, thank you so much for that. Also want to remind folks that in the chat, Dr. Gold has created a great offer, and that is if you want a free copy of her book, 7 Habits of Extremely Happy People, then you need to connect with her, private message her your email, and she will get that link out to you. Gigi, back to you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Choi, and thank you, Brett. Now, our next speaker is Rashonda Jacobs. Rashonda is the founder and formulator of Peace and Love Healing Bath Salt LLC, which was established with the goal of promoting holistic healing for the mind, body, and soul. The company takes pride in formulating all natural organic products, carefully selected and handmade. Jacob Smith draws inspiration from her Jamaican, St. Vincent, West Indian heritage, infusing Caribbean scents into many of her products. Welcome, Rashonda.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Gigi. I'm so glad to be here. Listening to everyone speak, I too have a Alzheimer's is dear to me because my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and but I learned so much, and you don't realize how much of what's going on till like years later sometime. And I was her caregiver. Um, so today I'm going to speak on self-care for the caregivers. Um, Caring for someone with Alzheimer's can be very stressful. It can be lonely, confusing, hurtful, and sad. And that's just to say the least. Everybody is different from with their experiences of what they feel. Um, it's very important as a caregiver to take care of yourself, to set time aside although it's difficult depending on the situation, but you must take care of yourself. Go on daily walks, exercise daily, just things that you enjoy. You have to uh, do that for a peace of mind. Just to de-stress. I'm sorry, to de-stress. Um, like Dr. Tanya said, we get caught up in those dailies. We have to move, and it's so important to get that blood flowing, and so you just de-stress. I'm sorry. So also, in addition to that, go on like spa days, um, or if you have it in your home, and it's so important to laugh. You have to laugh through all of that, because you can just be in the corner crying sometime, especially if it's a parent, because different emotions come out. They can be a whole different person from what you've known and who you've grown up with. Um, so that is very important. Also, it's good to have essential oils to just calm your senses down and just either awaken it or relax you. So the lavender is good for that. Eucalyptus, peppermint oil, and something that you enjoy is good. Those scents are also good. And having a support system, whether it's friends or relatives, you must have that support system to help you. And sometimes it can help you relieve some of that caregiver stress by taking over for a day. Um, and just being around to assist you and help out. It's also good to journal your daily thoughts, what you want to like the next day. Maybe you want to do something different with the your family member, and just to write down the reaction of what their um, response is, doing different with them. And it's good to contact the Alzheimer's Foundation for groups that can give you other ideas of what to do. I'm sorry, I'm a bit nervous. Ideas to give you an activities to do with them. So yeah, I'm sorry. Let's see. What else did I have? It's just important to take care of yourself, that self-care, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of them. And it'll just be a one big uh it'll be very difficult. Very difficult. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Rashonda. Very powerful.
Thank you.
Oh, you're muted, Dr. Joy.
There we go. Rashonda, I love the idea about self-care. I think that is so important about stress-free, having a system. I was there cheering for you. I was your system because I know you were a little nervous. I think all of us were cheering for you, but I'd speak for myself. Um, I found something that I thought would be helpful. Are you familiar with laughing yoga?
I'm not.
Laughing yoga. So for those of you who are going to do this in honor of Rashonda and her message, we're going to take yourself off of mute. Those of you who can take yourself off of mute, I want you to do it. And so, Dr. Gold, I have a little activity too. So here we go. This is a little something. So take yourself off of mute. Come on, let's do this. Okay, good. Here we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to, for 7 seconds, we are going to laugh. All right, so you ready? Yeah, some of you are starting already. Okay, ready? On the count of 3, we're going to go. Just laugh for 7 seconds. 1, 2, 3, go. Oh my goodness. Oh, it's so contagious. It's so good. Oh, it is such a stress reliever. The laughter it releases endorphins. It gives you an opportunity to really regroup. So I found that laughing yoga is a real thing, and so I incorporate it sometimes into some of my presentations when, especially, we're helping individuals focus on not being burned out, to be stress-free. And so we do this. So imagine you do it for 7 seconds, then you do it for 17 seconds, do it for 37 seconds, and then for 57. And let me tell you, by the time you're done with 57, your cheekbones are like really good. But imagine what it would be like to laugh for a minute. Oh, it's really great stress-free stuff. So that's what I really got as my takeaway from Rashonda. So
And Dr. Troy, I wanted to apologize. I'm a laughter yoga leader and I forgot to do our laughter today.
no, it's okay. I didn't know you were.
Remember, I'm going to change my words. I remember, but I didn't do it. So now thank you for doing it.
And Dr. Gold does another good thing that she put in the chat for those who can't read the chat or get to it right now that I want to come back to. It is really important to have positive speaking, to not have this limiting language. And your brain, by the way, doesn't respond to not know, doesn't and understand that. So if you say, I don't want to be sick, then your brain only hears, I want to be sick. Yeah. So if you want to be well, then say, I want to be well. And so really make sure that you're really focusing on positive speak, because it can really make a huge difference. All right, Gigi, let's go. Let's hear another one of our speakers. We're powerhousing through this tonight.
Yes, we are. And I love it. And I love the laughter yoga exercise. And also I took lots of notes. So thank you. Thank you. So very powerful, very powerful. Yeah. Now, our next speaker is Kelly Moore. Kelly Moore, she's a woman's brain health coach. Welcome, Kelly. Woo.
Hi, thank you, Gigi. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your stories. Really inspirational. I don't know if you guys have noticed the theme in a lot of the stories that have been told. Mother, grandmother, mother, grandmother. 2/3 of all Alzheimer's patients are women. 2/3, 66% are women. And why? Why is this, right? So there's a lot of information coming out that's really relevant to this topic that I want to get into. But first, I want to share a little bit of my story. My grandmother, again, a woman, had Alzheimer's disease. She came to live with us when I was in high school. So I got to see firsthand, kind of like Dr. Troy was saying, you know, we had a guest house. So her and my grandpa stayed out there. But I was in high school and, you know, my mom and dad would go out and they're like, oh, can you stay home and take care of grandma? And I'm like, grandma, she doesn't need a babysitter. Like, you babysit little kids, you know, not adults, right? So I didn't really understand what was going on until she got out and we lost her. She got out of the backyard and she wandered away. And we were literally combing the streets like we were looking for a lost dog. And it's really sad and really frightening. And we found her in a neighbor's backyard on the porch in their rocking chair, you know. So that really like had an impact on me. And then my mom was one of 9 children. So it was my mother's mom. And the doctor sat down all 9 children and told them that half of them would probably get Alzheimer's. So to tell them that at their ages, I mean, at the time, my mom was probably 50, you know, like, so he's planting the seed in their head that they might get this disease, which you know, is scary, right? You don't want, like you said, you know, your brain, if you say, I'm not going to get Alzheimer's, I don't want Alzheimer's, right? You want to say, I want to prevent Alzheimer's. And that's what I'm really passionate about, is helping people prevent Alzheimer's disease. And what happens is it takes about 20 years. So like things you do now matter when you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s. That shows up later in life. So you really need to take steps now to prevent it. And why I got so motivated is because I found out by accident. I didn't, you know, there's genetic testing you can do for Alzheimer's. And we had moved from Chicago to California in 2015, and I had some health problems and they were trying to figure it out. And so they ran all these tests. And so when I went in, the doctor sat me down and he said, "Oh, your numbers look good, but I just want to let you know you're at high risk for Alzheimer's disease." And I just started crying on the spot. I never went back to that doctor because I was really upset. I did not want to know that information. He didn't know my history. He didn't know my grandmother had Alzheimer's disease. I'm getting emotional. I can feel my heart beating right now faster just thinking about that day. So I just want to share with people that, genetic testing can be scary. I didn't even know he was doing it on me. But it's powerful. Now I know. I buried the knowledge for a couple of years. I have 3 boys. I have 3 boys, and I was just kind of like, what does this mean for me, for them, for my future? But I've decided to spend the rest of my life studying Alzheimer's, trying to help people prevent it. I went back and got certified as an integrative nutrition health coach. Right now, I'm studying for my board exams. I'm going to become a board certified health coach so that I can work for Apollo Health. And Apollo Health is Dr. Dale Bredesen. I don't know if any of you are familiar with him, but he wrote The End of Alzheimer's Disease. And there's a lot of good information in that book, but the gene I'm talking about is APOE4. There's an APOE gene, and you get a 2, 3, or a 4, and you get one from your mother and one from your father. And if you have APOE4, it puts you at heightened risk for Alzheimer's disease. And so you can have 1 copy or you can have 2 copies. I believe 1 copy increases your risk by like 15% or more, and then 2 copies is like 50%. Like it's really high if you're an APOE double 4. So homogeneous APOE4. And that's what I am. I have 2 APOE4s. But just because you have the gene doesn't mean you can doesn't mean you have to turn it on. And I believe that, and it's powerful. So that's why I want to promote genetic testing. If anyone in here had a family member and you're a little nervous about, oh, what does this mean to me? Knowledge is power. And if you know better, you can do better. And I have made a lot of changes in my life since I found this out. One is the research and the reading and like forums like this. So I'm so thankful that there's groups of people like this talking more about Alzheimer's. Your nutrition, your movement, sitting's the new smoking, they're saying, right? We got to move. Our bodies were designed to move. We weren't designed to sit, right? That's why our strength is in our legs. So we can use our legs and we should be moving. So those exercises are great. Like shake out, move, walked. I do 10,000 steps a day, every day. Weightlifting is so important. You want that lean muscle. And then for women, so here's the key for women. We go through this adventure called menopause, right? We're so lucky that we get to go through this roller coaster in midlife when our hormones change. And they're now finding that estrogen is very neuroprotective. It protects our brains a lot. And so when your estrogen drops, they are linking this as a potential reason why more women are getting Alzheimer's disease. So, and there's, hormone replacement therapy is something you can look at. It's just about educating yourself. Everyone's bio-individual. You have to figure out what's right for you. But this decrease in estrogen might play a part. My grandma had 9 children. She had a hysterectomy when she was in her 40s and never went on hormones. So she, was at low estrogen for a lot of her life. And, and she lived on a farm. And so they ate good. They ate fresh. They grew a lot of their food. So I just feel like as much as you can know and do to prevent it, that's what we need to spread that knowledge to people, right? Like the eating good. I think Dr. Tanya mentioned, blueberries. It's like avocado, broccoli, the smash fish, the salmon to get your fatty fish oils in, walnuts. Walnuts look like a brain for a reason because they're good for your brain, right? So walnuts are good. Coconut oil, leafy greens, eat your leafy greens. Eggs, actually, there's, so much information out there on eggs. People are saying, eat them, don't eat them for your cholesterol, but they have choline in them, which is good for your brain. Your brain needs choline. Turmeric, you know, is anti-inflammatory. So use that spice in your food, use spices in your food. So it's about eating right and exercising and knowing your testing. Like, so there's, you know, they say it could be like Alzheimer's is type 3 diabetes. So watch your sugar, right? Watch all your numbers, watch your lipids, look at your homocysteine. It could be toxicity. Do you have like too much aluminum or mercury in your system? I mean, you need to be your advocate and research all these things that could be impacting your brain health. And that's really why I think that knowing your genetic disposition is powerful. And it is scary. I'm not going to lie. It's scary, but that means I got one copy from my dad and one from my mom. My dad lived to be 80 and was still running his own business and was fine, you know, and my mom just turned 86. But she's doing all the things, right? She eats healthy, she exercises, she works in her garden every day, you know, and so it's that community, it's doing those things you love. All the things that were talked about today are so important. So I really encourage you, if you're on the fence about getting tested, it is scary and everyone's different. But for me, once I embrace that knowledge, like it really has changed my life. And I'm determined that I am going to keep my brain intact until I'm 100. And you just have to have that mental, you know, power about you. Like when you know something and you're so focused on it. And one thing I didn't mention too is limit alcohol. I know people don't like to hear that part of it, but really that's a toxin to our bodies. So that's another thing you want to limit. I told you things you could add, all the good foods, but you want to limit some of the toxic things like alcohol and sugar, smoking, you know, of those things. But I do have this, there is a this geno risk for Alzheimer's. This actually is more, this, I think it was, sorry, I forget your name. Brett mentioned like APP and presenilin 1 and presenilin 2. Those are other genes that can put you more at risk for Alzheimer's. I have not tested for those yet. I think I have enough on my plate knowing that I'm an APOE4 carrier. But this test does everything. And some things are protective against Alzheimer's. So if you're an APOE2, for instance, that's actually, they're finding neuroprotective. So that could help you. So it's good to know, because I think the decisions that I make now are going to impact my future, my son's future, right? I want to be there for them. I want to, you know, be there for my grandkids one day, know who they are, be able to play with them. And God willing, I want to help other people reverse any cognitive decline they have and share the research and knowledge that I've accumulated. And that's why that Apollo Health they have 2 programs called Recode and Precode. Recode is helping people reverse some signs of cognitive decline, and Precode is preventing any cognitive decline. So I believe there's hope. I believe in the white rose, the hope. I think if we share this knowledge with people, that we can put an end to people getting Alzheimer's disease by their lifestyle, diet, exercise, community, loved ones, support. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate forums like this. So thank you everyone for being here.
And thank you, Kelly. Thank you. And such a powerful list. I took notes: walnuts, coconut oil, greens, and spices in your food. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so Kelly, thank you. So it was shocking to hear that 2/3 of women are actually more susceptible than men. And you said early in your message that what you do now matters later, like maybe, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Can you recall and share with us, you just have to unmute to do that. Can you share with us maybe something that you now are reaping the benefit of, or something that you're putting in place today that you anticipate reaping the benefit of? Again, what's just one thing that you're doing?
Well, when I first found out is the 10,000 steps a day. So was the movement. And I'm pretty dedicated to that. My husband thinks I'm crazy. Like if it's at night and my counter's like at 9,500, I'm like, I'm going to go for a walk. And I walk down the street and back. Like it's just something that I'm like, they have linked movement to brain health is so important, even if it's just a walk. So that's something I put in place, and I'm pretty strict about sticking to it every day.
Yeah, good. So moving and laughing, those are two good things that I can do. Doesn't require a whole lot of brain power to do it, and I get a lot of great benefits. I did want to say about the avocado, like I had a comment on avocado until you talked about not drinking, but the best way to keep an avocado fresh after you've cut into it is to not use citrus, but to use white wine. So buy a cheap white wine that you don't want to drink, use it to save your avocado because the avocado will give you a lot of benefits, and then you won't have to worry about that wine thing, and then we'll be able to accomplish both things, right? Dr. Gold, you have something you
Yeah,
want to
just
add?
keep the pit. You don't have to, I mean, the thing with alcohol, especially in women, just remember it inhibits the alcohol, it inhibits the breakdown of estrogen, but it's not the good estrogens. So what happens is you raise the alcohol dehydrogenase, which is the byproduct from alcohol, increases risk for dementia just because it's so inflammatory. Also, we know with alcohol, you tend to urinate, so it dehydrates you, so it lowers your amount of blood. But the other big part is a toxin. So because of that breakdown product, it's very toxic to women, to their breast. And the major thing is even one glass of wine, the studies have shown now. Honestly, that study has gotten buried. It was a decade-old study. I don't think they've repeated it because some other people may have not wanted to see that study. But the idea is even one glass of wine, and I've seen this in my patients personally because they're like, Dr. Gold, I need something, to unwind with the kids and stuff. Again, going for the walk, doing the meditation, just some type of movement. What I've been doing is exotic dance. I literally, and I know this might not be your cup of tea, but I just listen. Yeah, you can do this. Tribal music. Because it resonates to our primal, like deep. So I just type in either Indian or tribal music, and it just gets to your soul. And I don't dance really well, but I just move my body. I'm in my backyard, no one's really watching, and I'm just earthing at the same time. But it just feels so good to kind of let it all out. And if I need to kind of scream for just a moment, let it out, it feels like really healthy. And I'll do that in my car sometimes so I don't scare anybody. But the idea is just to let it out to feel better. So
I like dancing too. So I'm dancing, I dance around the house, and my daughter looks at me and says, Dad, what are you doing? I said, well, honey, I'm doing dancing. She goes, you're embarrassing me. And I go, great, my
Thank
work here
you.
is done.
yeah. And I did want to
Yeah,
mention to everybody, please get your hormones checked. Men should not be at 300 for their
Yes.
testosterone. So make
Thank
sure
you.
you get that evaluated. And then for Kelly, I don't know if you had your hormone checked, but make sure they're optimal, not just zero. They should be really on the like 20-year-old scale. You want optimal values.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gold, for all those little bits of wisdom. I really appreciate you interjecting those into the conversation. As my friend Gigi would say, powerful. So yeah,
Yeah,
it is
and Jim
powerful
Quick is from Mind
to do
Valley
that.
Super Brain. If you really do want to just take a powerhouse, he literally teaches you how to remember and read faster so you can get more knowledge down.
That's
Jim Quick.
great, great. And then Kelly, if you would do for us, you mentioned a book, and you also held something up which doesn't necessarily translate really well with our backgrounds. And for those individuals who might be driving or remote, just so that we can get that information, because then Gigi can share that with others. Can you just in the next few minutes just put a note to everyone, please, on those books and that Geo something that you mentioned? Geo something, I forget what that
Yes,
was.
I'll put that in. It's the Geno risk for Alzheimer's. Yeah, the
Yes, the
genetic
Geno, right.
testing. Yeah,
Okay,
I'll put that.
awesome.
And then one last thing, because she mentioned the alcohol, mocktails are becoming really popular everywhere, and they're really good. So all you need is a little sparkling water and a little fruit juice and some lime. And you know what? It doesn't matter if the person next to you has wine and you have your mocktail, you're happy, your brain's going to thank you in the long run, and everyone still can have a good time.
Great. Thank you again. Thank you both.
Thank you. Now, our next speaker is Dominic. Dominic is an inspirational author, storyteller, and founder of the inspiration sharing and publishing platform Motivation Champs. Dominic is the author of inspirational books. My Name is Sharon, The Journey of a Grunt, How to Write a Book in 2020, and creator and co-author of the hit book, Go Ask Your Dad. His greatest accomplishments are his 2 children, and he aspires to be the best husband and father he can be. Dominic and Motivation and Champs share inspiration, smiles, and positivity 24/7 and help others do the same. This mission is accomplished through publishing, screenwriting, a large social media footprint, in-person events, and work with nonprofits. Welcome, Dominic.
Gigi, thank you. And I want to thank each of you for being here today and having me. What a group of wise and intelligent people. I'm getting so much out of it. So thank you very much. And it's great to have this type of conversation. And I'm going to talk a little about being alone through the process, and we'll get to that. But first thing I would say, I'm not an expert on Alzheimer's. Every bit of experience I have, I would give back to you right now. I would give it back to have one more second with my mom back. My mom had a 10-year battle with Alzheimer's, and it was heartbreaking. It was something I didn't expect, didn't know. So when I tell you I'm not an expert in it, I write stories for a living and help people share their message. And how I probably got more involved and ended up on this platform today, during the pandemic, we made a decision a couple months before the pandemic. My mom had a fall, and we put her in a home. My parents had a farmhouse, and she could no longer be in the house anymore. And we put her in a home. I think I really pushed that decision. Thought it was the safest place for her. And then a pandemic hits, and here you do one thing. So there's so much guilt because you do something that you think is the right thing, and then this pandemic comes where you're completely separated from this person when they maybe need you the most. So what I wanted to talk about is this journey that we all have through Alzheimer's. Like each of us, we have our stories about our moms, our parents, our grandparents. It stinks. It stinks in a lot of ways. It takes their dignity away at points. They become a person that you no longer know, a different person. Like my mom's hygiene changed, and her house, she hoarded and hid things, and she became a person that she wouldn't have wanted to be, but we still loved her. And so we lost her every day for years and years, where you'd have that moment and then you got less moments and less moments. And she didn't know my name for years. She didn't know her grandchildren's name. And it was heartbreaking. But where I wanted to go with this today is that she was more than a victim of disease. All our loved ones are more than a victim of disease. My mom, she was a light. She was handwritten notes. People come up to me and say that I never met before. And they say, your mom took me and bought me school supplies. What? They say, your mom took me to McDonald's on a day off school. I don't even know this person. And my mom was here. She wasn't this. We see this moment in time where they have this disease, but our loved ones are so much more than that moment. They are hope. They are the person that you always knew. They're in there. And don't forget that. When I was in the restaurant business, and when I was in the restaurant business, at one point I was going broke. I'm losing everything. And my mom, she worked at Goodwill at the time. And she would come at nighttime, and she learned how to bake and would make me cheesecakes and all these key lime pies and everything for my restaurant. And she would help do the dishes, and then she would want to buy something and wouldn't let me charge her, and that's who my mom was. And so I just want to let each of you know, your loved one's still in there. They are still in there. As the pandemic went on, now to get on to a few things that I think we can learn, that we can take away from it, is I think Dr. Troy was saying, don't argue, don't fight. We can't. You wouldn't argue with somebody that had another disease. You wouldn't argue. Part of the disease is they forget part of things. Part of the disease is they think they still have their keys. So you wouldn't argue with somebody that had a cancer. You wouldn't argue with somebody that had heart problems. But for some reason, when it comes to Alzheimer's, a lot of times people are, because they see the person that they love, they see them there, but they want to argue, they want to fight with them, they want to say, oh, mom, you remember, dad, you remember. No, they don't remember. So I want you to think about this and just know, whatever you're going through, as we see from this room here today, you're definitely not alone. What was the number? 7 million people and just in America going through the same thing you are. Here, we dealt with it so long in the shadows, where you don't want to say that my beautiful mom is ill. You don't want to take them out, and Dr. Troy, I think, mentioned the hygiene. So you can't, you want to take them out, but really what's best for them isn't to go out a lot of times, because there's all these stimulants and things like that. So you deal with this disease in the shadows. And I just wanted to tell each of you, you're not alone. So in those tough times, when you think nobody's been through this or it's different from me, just know that you're not alone. I think one of the things that I had going for me, it was a 10-year battle. So over 10 years, I learned about this disease. And so I tried to say everything I had to say, all the things, all my thoughts that each of us have, these things we wanted to tell mom, these things we wanted to tell dad, these things that I regret when I was 13 that I talked back to my mom. When I was 20, I regret that I drank a beer before I was 21 and mom had to yell at me. During this time, I used that 10 years to try to have zero regrets. And you never knew when the time was going to be, but I chose to spend as much time as I could with her, to read to her, to share pictures with her, to push her around the home when we finally got back in, to love her, to apologize, to have final words with her, as many times as I could. So I wanted to live in this world where I had zero regrets, where 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I don't look back and say, I wish I would have said that to my mom. I wish I would have held her. I wish I would have told her I loved her one more time. I did. When she was on her deathbed, I was there every day. I was hugging her. I was combing her hair. So I don't regret. I think I can live in a world where I know I gave it my all. And so that's what I would encourage each of you to do. Just at the end of the day, do your best. And you can only ever do your best with what you have. You have families, you have jobs, you have your own personal things going on otherwise, but you can give your best in that moment. And that's what I aimed for, shot for in that moment today. I tried to be the best Dominic I could be. All I say sometimes, all I could be is the best me I could be. I have a friend that his grandma, it's interesting, again, another woman, his grandma was going through the same thing. And he told me that he sat with her and he read to her and he was beside her. And when my mom started going through things, this really stuck with me. And I hope if you get anything out of this, to think of this. He said, when we were little babies and we cooed and cawed and oohed and ah, whatever those sounds babies make. Mom, dad, were still there for you. They didn't judge you when you didn't know what they were saying. They loved you unconditionally. They were there. They gave you the time that you needed. They didn't question you. They didn't argue with you. They didn't say when they didn't change how you pronounce things. They just loved you unconditionally. And so of all these points that I have today, each one, if you could just love them unconditionally, no judging. That little baby needed you. That you needed mom, you needed dad when you were a little baby. This is me holding up a little baby here. Now, your parents, your loved ones, they need you the same way. They might not understand. They might question. You might not know if they understand, but they still need you. And you, all you can do is be there for them. Just love them unconditionally. And now I'll share with you one more story here. You're not kicking me off yet. The one story that I'd like to share is, so as over the years, first, when my mom still lived in the farmhouse, there was certain times a day where she loved plants, and I could go as it progressed, as the disease progressed. There were certain times a day she was clearer. Then there was certain rooms in the house she was clearer. And I knew, okay, I got my mom for a little longer there. There was more time, more clarity. Then later on, when I would read to her or share pictures with her, so I had the same pictures, and I would say, okay, I'd go through them. Mom, you ever seen this place before? And she hadn't known my name for years, and it would be the old farmhouse. And she'd say, I live there. Okay. You go through, it'd be me, my dad wouldn't say anything. Pictures, I'm scrolling through pictures. Then it'd be a picture of her parents. Who's this, Mom? Who do you think this is? That's my mom. That's my dad, brother, sister. And she would go through, and we would go over these pictures over and over and over. And sometimes over the years, once she was in a home, and I'd sit out front, and some of these agencies would give those little dolls and for needy hands, and she would play with those dolls, and I'd sit there almost in tears watching my mom play with these dolls and just watch her, and spend time with her. And then we'd go through these, continue with the pictures. And sometimes she'd look at me a little closer like this. Or I'd ask her a question and she'd look at me a little closer. And I feel that she knew a glimpse, a moment. And that's what this disease is all about. For me, that journey, you wait. Those moments mean everything. And if you fight, you don't give up hope, and you get a moment, you get a word, a name, a last second, one more, and you can always get one more. So one year we took her out of the home. I think this was deep in COVID, and they let me take her out of the home at Christmas time. And we went and looked at me, my uncle, which is her brother, son and daughter, so full car, went and looked at Christmas lights. And she hadn't been out of the home for it was the pandemic. And I said, I'm going for it. I'm picking her up. That's that. And so we drove around to these local neighborhoods. I knew I didn't have much time. So we drove around to these local neighborhoods and things like that. And Christmas lights, snowman. This is her still remembering something. So then I see her watching how we're driving. At one point I go to pull on the highway. And she says, Dominic, which is my name. And she was alerting me over the traffic. My mom hadn't said my name for years and years. But in that one moment, she knew my name. There was that hope, there was that look, there was that glimpse. So I'll leave you with this today, is love is never forgotten. In there, your loved one is in there. Don't give up hope. Love is never forgotten. So thank you very much. Thank you for letting me probably run over my time. So I appreciate you.
Wow. Thank you, Dominic. I love it. And earlier you mentioned we've heard in regards to this happening to a mother, a father, a grandparent, someone we know, or an individual with Alzheimer's in general. And so, as you mentioned, it's so important to understand what Alzheimer's disease is. Like I said, very powerful. Thank you, Dominic.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, Dominic, I think one of the things actually, I had three things that I really took away from your message and your stories. The one is living with zero regrets. You know, making sure that you say it. I've had people say, you know, when I'm a frequent, I love you. Like I tell people as much time as I can, the individual kids, family members, whatever, I love you. And I've had others say, well, they know. And I think to myself, they might know, but they like to hear it. So it's usually, you know, it's a nice thing to be able to get that out there and to not live with any regrets. And my mom was very good about saying you need to patch up everything before you go to bed at night. Like you don't go to bed mad. You don't go to bed with something on your mind. You have to make sure that you complete and finish. I think so what you're saying about this concept is finish the circle. Finish what you actually need to do. And do your best. I love the fact that what you've said is you just do your best. Like you shouldn't be competing. It's not like people should be looking at you going, well, you could have done more or you should have done more. And that is very natural for us as humans to do. Like we take a negative approach sometimes. Instead of complimenting somebody for the best they've done, we might want to pull them down for something where we didn't feel they did their best. But I think you just really have to go forward, do your best, celebrate the best you do. And then the most important thing that you said, which is so true, is that that person is still in there. That person is still in there and they need you. And that example of the baby, oh my gosh, that's just so it. Like your parents, your mom, your dad, now there may be some people that are listening that did not have great relationships with their families. I understand that, but we're going to speak to the people who did. And for those individuals who had great relationships with their parents and with their mom specifically, then you just remember your mom loved on you in ways in which you didn't deserve, but yet she did it anyway. And so I think that it's, I think it's fitting for us to complete the cycle and for us to remember that, you know, nobody made us wrong because we were 3 years old and kept asking why or we forgot. So I good stuff, really good stuff. So Gigi, I'm going to ask you if you have some other comments before we turn to the panel discussion or something else you might like to do before we do that.
Yes, I just have closing remarks. As far as this segment goes, just I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Very powerful talks. My goodness, oh my goodness, very powerful. Like I said, I took notes. Also, I'd like to share a resource here. It's Elder Options. That's agingresources.org. I'll share it in the comment section in the chat. And that's aging resources to ensure that communities have a trusted and unbiased place to turn for information, resources, and assistance. That's the Elder Helpline, 1-800-262-2243. And I'll share that in the comments section. And then also, lastly here, this message is coming from an anonymous source, a person, beautiful soul. And that message is that the individual would like to see a cure for Alzheimer's disease. And that's all I have for now. Thank you. Dr. Choi,
Okay.
take it away.
Okay, all right, here we go. Dr. Gold, just want to remind you, a few people I think have sent you some emails to get that free copy of your book. So that was great. Kelly, thank you for updating your information about the book and the Geno piece that I forget the name of it already. And then if for the rest of you, if you haven't put your contact information in the chat, please do so that Gigi can get that out and then be able to share that with others who might request it later. With that, we're going to close out our session with a little panel discussion. So those of us who are speakers, and Gigi's for you too. So please go ahead and take yourselves off of mute. And I'm just going to start, and I'll call on the first person with a question. So Kelly and Tanya, there you go. Dr. Gold, Dominic, good. Brett, you're good. Okay, excellent. All right, so the first question, and again, just one thing. What was your single biggest challenge in dealing with an individual who had Alzheimer's? What was your biggest challenge? Okay, Dr. Gold.
Patience.
Patience. Yeah. Patience.
I can elaborate, but I didn't know if you wanted to say
No, patience is good. We're just going to hear from the rest of the group. The rest of the group, come on, you need to fill in here. What was your biggest challenge?
I'll go and I'll say guilt, Dr. Troy.
Guilt. Patience and guilt. Brett, how about you?
I would definitely say acceptance, simply because I kept thinking, no, it's just like medication thing, or no, go away tomorrow. And it just kept getting worse and worse. And, the good days turned into bad days, and those very, very bad days where it's just, you just keep thinking it's going to get better. And I'm still somewhat in denial.
Yeah, great, great. Kelly, how about you?
I would say fear, I guess, just because at the age I was in high school and seeing my grandma not know who my grandpa was or who my mom was. Like I was young, I didn't understand what was going on. And fear, I would say, is like my experience firsthand with being around the
Got it.
disease.
Rashonda, Gigi, how about the two of you?
Yeah, patience even further, even if you have patience, even deeper on a deeper level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not getting
Yeah,
angry.
I would say not understanding what was going on.
Yeah. For me, it was screwing it up. I was
Mhm.
afraid that I was going to screw it up, that I was going to make it worse. It was already a bad situation. And it was like, what if I did something that messed it up? So that's why I always just focused on, like, what did I think would make mom feel good? What do I think she would need to make her, um, you know, have less pain? So again, great job on doing that. So another question is, tell me something that you know now that you wished you had known then. Okay, Dr. Gold is great. You just kick it
Sorry,
off. No,
it's
no, it's good.
resources.
Resources. Yeah. Resources are good. And Gigi, you gave us a resource that you're
Yeah.
typing into the comment section. And Kelly, you gave us resources, and Brett, you certainly were full of resources there. You told me about zebrafish, and I didn't know about that before.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. What are some other what is something else that you now know today that you wish you had known then?
The person is still in there.
Yeah, the person is still in there. Okay, come on, folks.
Yeah, and I would say I wouldn't be afraid now because now I know more about the disease and what's really happening to their mental facilities. So just again, use that patient and love and don't be afraid of them. They're still that same person.
Yeah. Great, 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 good. And then,
I
I
would
would have had
say,
oh, good.
one-on-one time. Oh, sorry.
101,
I
101
would have
time.
had more one-on-one time with my mother. Just me and her, and had those moments and took pictures and just,
Okay.
things like that to just, have memories of that moment, even in her change of who she is, but just having those intimate moments with her.
Yeah. Dominic, I think you were going to say something and I may have cut you off. I apologize.
Uh, no, I was thinking you passed, go on. If it comes back up, I'll go like this. Yeah,
Okay,
go on.
good.
so
Brett?
for me, a support system, just because I was really young and I'm seeing this stuff happen. I don't know what's going on. And first it was funny, actually. I remember like thinking it was hilarious, It's like, oh, person the microwave, or forgetting my name, and then it gets worse and worse. You just like somebody who could, empathize with you. So
Great.
Dr.
So,
Troy, I was going to say, I wish
yeah,
I wish that me and my family would have prepared and talked about all of this earlier, rather like thinking that this could happen. Like Kelly was saying, this could happen to so many people, and we never had those conversations and we weren't prepared at all. So
Right.
that's what my answer.
yeah. And so I'd like to close out this panel section here, and then with a question that is more like a request, and that is, what is your favorite moment, or at least one moment that you can recall that you'd like to share about your loved one that either is currently suffering through it or has already passed? What's your favorite memory? And by the way, this is radio silence, so please no radio silence. Keep doing one together because we're live on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I, I think for my grandmother, she was just such a bright light. And even when this was occurring too, she always would still sing and just smile and just love. It was just her heart was so bursting forth. I think she was even happier, while this is happening, where, because she just made so many people happy. So her name is Doris. I love her. And I know she's still shining her light on us every day.
Yeah, it's great. Dr. Gold, great. And please use the person's name. I think that was awesome. You all heard me talk about my mom, Fanny. So, all right, who's next? Come on, no radio silence. Let's go.
Laughter. That's the memory
Okay.
I have with my loved one. Laughter.
Oh, the times of laughter, that
Yes.
memory of laughing together.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. Good.
I would say
Oh.
for my grandma, her name was Dorothy, and just cooking with her were great memories. I mean, we still pass down some of her recipes. Like my sons love, grandma's cinnamon rolls, homemade. Like she put her love into making food for people.
Yeah,
Yummy.
great. Good, good.
Yeah.
My mother, she was busy, a leader, and just she would do a water aerobics and just meet people and teach them water aerobics and just have a whole new group of friends. She was very lively and active.
Rashonda, what was her name?
Jane
Jane.
Jacobs.
Jane Jacobs. Okay, great.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And then Brett, do you have a memory to
I
share?
mean, coming up with one, that's why it's difficult. There's just an infinite amount. But
Yes.
I think the thing I always appreciated the most, because I had three different grandparents who had Alzheimer's. So for two of them specifically, the I'm not going to say the most, but something I really miss is Sylvia and Joe. Wherever we were, they'd meet friends with everybody. It didn't matter their race, their background, their religion, their sexual orientation. I mean, it was just unbelievable. It was like they would meet friends just everywhere. My grandpa was in the Navy, and they really taught me, especially living in New York City, I appreciate a lot more because you have hundreds and hundreds of languages here, different races and backgrounds, and just being able to meet a lot of different people. I mean, I could talk to a wall. Like I'll talk to random people all day, and I get a lot of that from them. But I think just that they were so loving and caring and open to meeting new people who, maybe had different beliefs or different religious, ideals. And it was just so cool and that's how I learned so much as well, because when you talk with different people who have different thought process than you, it's like you learn from them. You might not agree, but you're able to have a conversation about something that's usually uncomfortable. And so I miss that a lot because they taught me so much on just how to treat people and how to learn from others. And I mean, but there's hundreds and hundreds of things, but that's just one that stands out a lot.
I know, Brett, it is really tough to pick some things. I've certainly got some cooking memories, but I think the one that I'll share is I remember as a child waking up early in the morning, like around 6 a.m. My mom and dad always talked around the kitchen table as mom prepared his breakfast, packed his lunch to send him off to work. They lived in an era in which my dad was the protector and provider. My mom was the nurturer and the caregiver. And I could never make out the conversations from my bedroom, but I could hear them in the kitchen talking. And I just knew how important that communication was. And that's the one thing that really, from this disease that is so impacted, is the communication is so different. Oftentimes, we had a little joke that we would say is that we never knew what mom was going to say next. We called it conversation roulette because sometimes she would just come out of the blue and say something that we didn't even know what it referred to. But I think it's remembering the two of them talking and then and how important that was. So Gigi, what else would you like to say before we close out?
Yes, wow. Like I said, very powerful. We heard from amazing speakers from all over the world. Thank you all. And thank you to our amazing sponsors as well. And thank you all for joining us today. and make sure that if you didn't take notes, make sure to watch the replay, right? Watch the replay as well. I took lots of notes, yeah. And again, thank you all for being with us today, and thank you, Dr. Choi, as well. And so we'd like to close out with a prayer by Dr. Choi Hall.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
That's yes, and we bless the dog. So Father God, we come before you, Lord, united in a cause, creating awareness and education to something that's very important to us. Lord, we thank you for just the way that you have helped us deal with this, that you have given us wisdom that we are able to share. This isn't just knowledge that we've kept to ourselves, but we are sharing this wisdom so that others might have an easier time than maybe what we had as we learned through it. And so we thank you for that. We thank you for the resources that are provided to us. And most importantly, I thank you for the hope that you give me that there can be and will be a future in this. I am grateful for the fact that there will be a white rose someday. Although I may not be around to see it, I know there will be a white rose. And Lord, I just thank you so much for that. Thank you for all of these great witnesses today who have come forward to share an abundance of information. And for those who are listening, we thank you so very much. It's in your mighty name that I say these things.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Very powerful prayer. Thank you, Dr. Choi, and thank you all. God bless you and be safe.